So our president wants Kenya to be like Singapore. The skyscrapers, the spotless streets, the efficiency, the digital economy. All very inspiring. But before we start sketching our skyline, perhaps we should first fix the road to Manga, Mote and Momwamu in Nyamira County. Because, Your Excellency, Singapore did not become Singapore by holding conferences about Singapore. It started by fixing the small things. Roads that don't drown in mud, promises that don't dissolve in the rain. It's been 3 years since the then Deputy President William Ruto stood on a podium in Nyamira and promised a tarmac road. The people there are still waiting for that tarmac you launched, not at a construction site, but on a campaign podium. You even quoted the kilometers, 300 of them. Remember? Yes, it was true in speech, but kwa ground mambo ni tofauti. What the locals have today isn't tarmac, it's a mud bath with potholes so deep they could qualify as fish ponds. And in Bungoma, residents are now hosting weekly road shows, not the political kind, the protest kind, because vehicles get stuck so often they've become part of the local landscape. Yet you keep hearing that Kenya is on the Singapore path. Yes, maybe if Singapore also started with unfulfilled road projects, delayed tenders, and citizens trekking through sludge. Let's be honest. Before we dream of flying cars and bullet trains, we should probably learn how to keep a pickup from sinking in a village road. Singapore wasn't built in a day, but it was built. Meanwhile, in Kenya, we are still launching what we never finish, promising what we can't deliver, and branding potholes as development challenges. You see, Singapore didn't get there by launching projects it never finished or by turning campaign pledges into folklore. Singapore built system. But here, we build ceremonies and cut ribbons. In fact, in Kenya, we have two kinds of roads. Those that exist in speeches and those that exist in suffering. The road to Singapore, it seems, is paved with colorful promises, cancelled tenders, and angry residents. So, Your Excellency, by all means, let's chase the Singapore dream. But maybe our road to Singapore begins in Nyamira and Bungoma and every forgotten corner where citizens are still waiting for the basics. Because you can't pave the road to Singapore if you haven't even paved the road to a school. And that is my memory.
On my kicker tonight, Kenya's diplomacy is living through very interesting times. On Wednesday, top officials of the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs stood on the steps of their offices to clarify, or was it to defend or interpret, remarks made by Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni regarding the arrest and detention of Kenyan activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo. He didn't mean a fridge. It was actually not about a freezer. It was metaphorical. Korir Sing'oei said as he momentarily turned into a very effective spokesman of the Ugandan president. As Kenyans, we would have let that pass if this was not just about freezers, fridges, and maybe some of our dispensable citizens. I think dispensable because defending a fridge over a citizen stood out clear on which between the two was dispensable. Back to President Museveni's remarks. Other than fridges, the Ugandan president said something else that is worth noting. Museveni said that, and I quote, "The Indian Ocean is mine." Now, geographically, this of course does not make sense, as Uganda is a landlocked nation that only has access to the Indian Ocean by land through Kenya and maybe northern Tanzania. But the Ugandan president is saying, and I quote again, "That ocean belongs to me." He continues, "I'm entitled to that ocean." And then he deadpanned with a warning, and I quote, "In future, we may have wars." Predictably, the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has responded in sisterly fashion. The ministry yet again turning into the interpreters of President Museveni's mind and thoughts, and declared that the Ugandan president was just being metaphorical. Well, Museveni's metaphors included his lamentation of Uganda's wish to build a navy. Quote, "How can we build a navy?" he asked. "We don't have access to the route, to the sea." He continued, "Uganda is landlocked inside here, but where is my ocean? My ocean is in the Indian Ocean. It really belongs to me." I'm still waiting for a metaphor here. Away from metaphors, Idi Amin Dada is one of Museveni's predecessors as president of Uganda. Back in 1976, President Idi Amin made open territorial claims over parts of Kenya. Citing colonial boundaries, Idi Amin declared that the Kenya-Uganda border lies only 30 kilometers west of Nairobi. He later clarified that the eastern Uganda border should lie in Naivasha town. The rest of the land west of Naivasha, he said, belonged to Uganda. In the good old days, duties of the Foreign Affairs Ministry did not include speaking for foreign head of state. And so the government of Kenya at the time, led by President Jomo Kenyatta, was livid. The straight-speaking President Kenyatta warning that he will not tolerate anyone playing with the sovereignty of Kenya. He said, and I quote, "I wish to warn those who may have desires on Kenya that even if they have guns and warships, we shall deal with them ruthlessly." Now, Kenyatta's language was often X-rated, but to pick a bearable part of his remarks, he warned Idi Amin's Uganda firmly by saying, quote, "Those who say their country extends from present borders, I advise them to go to hell and dream there. We shall have no one lay claim over our territory. We shall not give away an inch, not even a quarter of an inch." End of quote. The warning worked, and Idi Amin changed his mind and course. But 3 years later, Idi Amin chose another territory to claim, a small enclave by the Kagera River in northern Tanzania. That turned out to be his final mistake. Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere did not invoke metaphors. He dispatched his military, led by Brigadier Msuguri, with instructions to clear Idi Amin out of Kagera region. The Tanzanian army took it a step further by chasing Idi Amin out of Kampala in October 1979. And that to date remains one of the most compelling stories on the consequences of laying claim to another country's territory. So as we go to bed tonight with the assurance that Museveni is just being metaphorical, two things prevail. One is a whole landmass called Kenya actually lies between Uganda and the Indian Ocean. And secondly, the waters immediately after Kenya's shoreline, or call it beach, are within Kenya's territorial waters. And after that, there are international waters. And indeed, President Museveni's Indian Ocean may just be a metaphor as a fact. That is my kicker.
My dear Kenyans, we are at a turning point in our history. And I call upon you all to participate with I and we in Safina in taking Kenya through the next phase of our liberation, called economic liberation. I plead with you to seize this moment, to look at every single leader that comes before you attempting to take your vote, to articulate to you the issues of your life, the issues of the day in Kenya. This is a moment for you to change history. It is our moment as a country. It was started by Gen Z, and we must complete this journey of liberating Kenya from the shackles of what was created in 1920 by the colonialist. You must arm yourself with that voter's card. You must participate in an election that answers your question when you X the box. It must be you you're voting for, not Jimmy, not whoever else. It is you yourself you're voting for. Your question must be answered when you're Xing that box. And that question can only be the next phase of our liberation, which is the economic. Join us in that liberation.
Mido nacheza mdhamini si na kaona dai moshi tazivuta vuta, limit ya kuuliza imeongezeka nikoma, neza shika jag na kanudu sie, nacheza kiroro, neza fika soko, turirime mdagi meditation naki, shusha kipandaski cha podonde, neza rada nama vuta izoma.